Okay, I think we'll get started here and rely upon the substance of what we're talking about to drive in at least 200 more people.
Yeah, almost all seats are filled now.
You better get one or you won't get a seat.
There might be some
They're
standing
almost all
spots in the
taken.
back.
Standing room only. 30 seconds.
So, Niccolo, congrats on launching Gordon Ramsay Dash recently. So, since the game's launch, just what worked well, what hasn't worked well, and if you compare it to the other Dash games you have, what's different? What works better?
It's a question that I almost never get, Michael. No. So, Glu's strategy in celebrity gaming, for those of you that are not following it, is fundamentally about how do we take a proven game that monetizes well, has a solid LTV, and turbocharge that experience. And we do that not only by trying to expand the audience, which fundamentally drives, of course, more installs organically, but it also tends to be a lowering of the average cost per install for even paid acquisition. So there's an audience expanding function for these partnerships. And then there's also unique, let's call it content tie-ins. And Gordon Ramsay Dash exhibits actually all three of these, let's call it turbocharging factors to it. So Gordon's, of course, been a strong supporter of his own game. You can get it from his Twitter feed. There's a button right there. He's, of course, been all over social media and on TV, in the press, talking about this. But the game itself is actually quite unique. It has Gordon doing a heck of a lot of VO in it. You can be sworn at live by Gordon if you play it, as I'm sure many of you know. And it has a lot of his own refinements and, let's call it, polishing touches on it. So things like the Michelin star system in that game, loosely based on the Michelin star system, was his own idea and something that adds a lot of authenticity to the game. So whether you're a Gordon or a Kim Kardashian, it's the same three effects of trying to grow the DAO base of the game, lower the actual CPI for paid marketing, and then sometimes you get a welcome boost in things like retention as well. So both in Gordon and Kim's game, we have seen that people stay in the game longer than they did in the predecessor titles, namely Cooking Dash and Stardom, respectively. And there's probably on the margin a greater propensity to actually spend. We certainly saw that in Kim's game and to some extent in Gordon's as well. So we're pleased with both those partnerships, and they're a template of what we're trying to accomplish with the rest of our roadmap. Next up, for us, will likely be a Nicki Minaj game this fall.
Awesome. You mentioned decent LTM. What kind of LTMs are they seeing, and how does the celebrity factor play in compared to the previous game?
Yeah. So thankfully, because we're public, I can answer that question pretty accurately. If you look at Kim Kardashian Hollywood's cumulative revenue between June 2014 and let's say the end of last year, you come to something like $157 million of revenues that we disclose. And we also have shown publicly infographics saying that we've done almost 40 million installs. So if you divide those, you can sort of get to about a $4 cumulative LTV in that game so far. I expect that we'll see similar numbers from Gordon's game and other successful celebrity partnerships. The actual LTV expansion comes about through a mixture of metrics moving up. So it's not one single thing. It's a little bit better retention, a little bit better conversion. And together, those two things, as well as better, some companies call it ARPU, average revenue per paying user, those three metrics, if they each go up 10 or 20%, in aggregate, you get quite a big boost to overall LTV.
Awesome. Out of the games you have, you had the Kardashian games, Katy Perry, a wide range of celebrities with a large following. Some games work better than others, right? Kim is still doing really well, others haven't. What makes a more successful celebrity game, and what are the factors for the less successful ones?
I hate that question, Michael. Give me an easier one, like my favorite color. Those of you who were here before, I think one of the most truthful things I've seen this conference so far is Ed's line about how making games is hard. And making games is hard, and by that, it's not only difficult to bring together the art and the science of a really good experience, but there is an element of market timing to it as well. we're a consumer business. Not even the greatest fashion designer in the world, the greatest novelist, greatest film director, greatest musician of all time. None of these things guarantee that everything you make is going to be a hit. So there's always an element of variability and kind of, frankly, catching consumer sentiment when you bring out a product. There's always a balance between what's old and what's new, ultimately. One of the most challenging things to do when you're building a game is to go, I'm going to deliver a brand new experience, but it can't be so brand new that no one can figure out how to play it. So it has to be brand new on the surface, but perhaps there's elements underneath you understand, or vice versa. It looks brand new, but the surface is not as new. We all stand on the shoulders of giants in the content creation business. That old adage that there's only 7 stories in Hollywood and all movies are 7 stories. It's true to a certain extent in gaming as well. Whether you're a Pokemon or Kim or Gordon, things like this have been tried before, things have been done before, certainly on other platforms. But if they haven't punched through before, there's always a chance that they can. And so I would say when you look at our portfolio of celebrity games, the successes we've had have been a mixture of the art and science coming together well, it being a great experience, fast load times, not really any bugs, a snappy game, also something that hasn't been recently seen before helps. And then lastly, there's always an element of whether or not you're doing something that is fresh enough. We perhaps didn't do that with our Britney Spears and Katy Perry games, for example, where we were counting on new brand and more established monetization engine to carry the game forward. And what we've seen in those games is a decent LTV, but not a big enough audience. So what's interesting is when you think about Kim's game audience, it's actually 3 or 4 audiences that have been pulled into it. So you've got Kim's core fan base, which at the time was 40 million social followers when we started. Today it's 160 million. But she's actually pulled in 2 or 3 other adjacent, let's call it Venn diagrams of demographics. So you've got people interested in Hollywood and being famous, becoming famous. Then you also have, I would say, in Kim's game, young adult, let's call it young adult female decision makers. 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, largely, females who are saying, like, I want to experience what it's like to make my own decisions. Who do I date? Who do I work with? How do I tackle this situation? And if you pull all 3 of those together, you have a 150, even maybe $200 million game by the time you're done. Gordon, to some extent, is doing the same thing, where there's never been a celebrity food game in any category. So we're first. And being first certainly helps because you can pull in Gordon's core audience, then you can pull in the broader, let's call it culinary, demographic. And there's also hospitality and a bit of entrepreneurship. I mean, Gordon's game is about how do you go from 1 restaurant to 5 or 10 and build a whole restaurant empire, fundamentally. So we continue to believe in what we're doing. I mean, we are leading what I call the personalization of media through gaming. It's the same trend you're seeing on TV and, frankly, in all forms of media, where in the Western world, people are becoming what is followed and what is more important. If you're Maria Bartiromo, there's a lot of people going to tune into her show, regardless whether it's on CNBC or Fox Business or whatever. People will move that. Glenn Beck moved off Portal. Howard Stern effectively has been off of terrestrial broadcast for most of his, at least financial career, on Sirius and XM. And this is part of the same trend. When Tim Cook says we've figured out that the future of TV is apps for Apple, we totally agree. The future of everything, I think, is an app. The future of magazines, future of TV, the future of music, future of gaming, obviously, is an app as well. But I think gaming is actually poised to be, in some ways, the apex predator of the entertainment space. We can generate more revenue per second of engagement, more revenue per daily active user than any other form of entertainment, because we are better at driving that compulsion loop. And I think the future of gaming, fundamentally, to pick a theme for today's session, future of gaming and entertainment is intertwined. The gamification of entertainment and the personalization of entertainment is what we're going to see a lot of in the next 5 to 10 years. People become more important. Taylor Swift, who's another partner of ours, has almost 250 million social followers. It's amazing. That would make her something like a top 10, top 5 country by population on a global basis. And there is overlap there, but it gives you a sort of idea of the scale of both passive and active interest in what her brand and what she's doing. She can be her own TV network, fundamentally. And everybody we're working with has that potential. I mean, Nicki Minaj is, for example, the most successful, not only female rapper of all time, but one of the most successful rappers of all time, and she's just getting started. She's young. She's been the winner of various MTV and BET awards for 7 years in a row. And if we're successful with that game, it'll be because not only do we create a great Nicki experience, but we pull in the broader hip hop, rap, and R&B demographics to be playing one single experience.
What should we expect from the upcoming game from Taylor Swift or Nicki?
Well, what I'll say at this time, and for those of you who are Glu shareholders or follow us, we put out demo videos every quarter. And so hopefully you'll get at least one of those two at the upcoming earnings on August 2nd. Both of these experiences are going to break a lot of new ground. And they're going to be in the theme of how do we gamify entertainment and how do we make sure we have a really innovative social experience. Both will have elements of monetization that is proven because, of course, what we have to do with these partnerships that are so important for their brand and ours is make sure that we bringing something out with a strong probability of commercial success. So, as I like to always say to my celebrity partners, you bring the installs, we'll bring the LTV. And that's a great way of thinking about how these partnerships fundamentally work, which is if they drive installs and down engagement, we have to make sure we've got an engine that delivers that, that $4 back over 2 years, or hopefully better.
So talking about engagement, music is such an interesting category. Do you see where Taylor Swift or any other musician will, let's say, provide exclusive content, a new song, a new video as part of the game, and that obviously will draw a lot of new people, a lot of the fans, or use a game actually above being the game, like a platform for key direct engagement between the celebrity and the global audience?
I agree with all that. I mean, I think you're going to see those sorts of themes in our products because, of course, in the music space and aggregate, there's a lot of frustration, right? So record labels are frustrated. Revenue's been declining 10 years. Artists are frustrated because they feel like they're not paid for digital music really fairly for the equity value they generate. And they're certainly not making money in recorded music. So what's happened in the music industry is even if you were a really big artist, Taylor Swift was at the top of, I think, the celebrity, let's call it, income earners last year, at least according to Forbes. And it was something like $170 million. I think she was number one. I'm going to guess that a very, very large percentage of that was performance. Right? So performance is the number one revenue generator if you're an artist, regardless of almost the scale, because the ratio is the same all the time. After that, you've got merchandising and sponsorships and those kinds of things. And gaming and apps actually, in my opinion, are poised to be right there on the podium. For Kim, we are number 2 on the podium, probably. I mean, according to Forbes, we were 40% of Kim's, haul of sort of gold last year, which means we're probably number 1, number 2. We're certainly in the top 2 or 3 revenue streams. And for a Taylor or Nicki, we're planning on being the same thing. We hope to do the same for Gordon Ramsay, who was also in the top 100 most successful celebrities last year. And I think what we're trying to do is fundamentally find ways to generate not just equity value, but also new income streams using what musicians are great at, which is engaging audiences and getting people out. Successful musicians are great at not only getting performance to work, but they're great at ancillary, let's call it popular culture categories like fashion and social media. If you look at the most followed people in the world, it's female musicians, largely speaking. Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, they're all in the top 5 most popular, most followed people of all time. Men are not nearly as good as women at building social media followings. It's very interesting, actually. There's very few men that break 50 million followers, and almost none break 100. So I can't promise that we have cracked the formula that's reproducible. We're exploring and exploiting the same phase with each one of these products. But I do believe that fundamentally the next 5 years we'll see meaningful revenue coming from music-related experiences that are artist-centric. And it'll be a means of them generating an income stream that maybe might be number 2 after that performance.
And merchandising, you mentioned it, is a large revenue stream for music in general. And I think you had some initial implementation of commerce and Kendall and Kylie. How did that work, and is that planned for any of the other apps as well?
Yeah, so we've actually done real-world integrations in 3 or 4 of our celebrity games so far. Kendall and Kylie's got plenty. Kim was the pioneer, as she often is, and we're starting to bring them into our Britney game, and we'll certainly have them in I'm sure in the Taylor and Nicki games. What's interesting about the brand integrations is that it does 2 or 3 things again. So we're actually doing these integrations fundamentally for the authenticity. Make the virtual and physical worlds twist themselves up together in new and unique ways. So that when you're in Kim's game, the store isn't just say fashion boutique. It says, Karl Lagerfeld's boutique, for example. And it adds to that engagement effect. It adds to retention. It also adds unique items. So the deals that we've done for brand integrations, actually it's rarely about linking out to physical merchandise. It's often about cross-promotion and virtual goods. So you can buy an actual, Balmain article of clothing in Kim's game, or an actual Karl Lagerfeld item of clothing for a premium price. And that's a high-margin good that Kim benefits from, we benefit from. And for the fashion brands themselves, they're getting exposure in something that I would say is fundamentally the same as a daily TV show. The number of people that are playing a Kim game or even a Gordon game are not far off of the audiences you're seeing on the Food Network, or even primetime late-night TV sometimes when Dow spikes.
What are some of the celebrities you currently don't have and would like to have or work with?
I mean, aside from the Michael Metzger game and the Niccolo de Masi game, which will be smash hits judging by this audience, this is the best attended event you've been to at Casual Connect today, right? Definitely. At least factor of 2 better than anything else you've seen. And at the end of this, you're going to have to cheer extra loud so that all the people that are tuning into this online are convinced there's over 10,000 people in the room, even though there's only 3,000 Casual Connect attendees. Michael, we've tried a male game with Jason Statham. We've done a shooter with him. It didn't outperform what we've done with things like Deer Hunter, Dino Hunter, Contract Killer, Falling Commando, which is interesting. Part of that's because perhaps he only has 50 million social followers, and that's a lot for a man, but it's not a lot compared to a Taylor. Part of it might be that we didn't nail the affinity for his audience between what he's about and what the game's about. Or it might not be that clear. For Gordon, for Kim, we've really connected with why you're following them. Why you're following Kim is this sort of study of fame is what our game is about. Why you're following Gordon, the study of not just the culinary arts, but also hospitality is why you are following what's interesting about him. That's what the game is about. So future celebrity partnerships are all fundamentally about tying those together better and authentically. And we're looking for people that can get us into new categories. We haven't done sports, for example. One of the reasons for it is it's hard to find an experience that's broad enough that's also done well on mobile. So mobile doesn't always do kinetic gaming experiences as well as, say, console, for example. So, football works on console in a kinetic experience, so does soccer. Harder to do that through a mobile handset without some sort of analog of the gaming experience. We haven't done other male celebrities, but we have announced that we've signed one. We haven't announced it formally yet. So there are rumors as to who that could be. What I'll say is that Glu is the proud maker of the #1 baseball game on the App Store, Tap Sports Baseball, and Chris Bryant was our partner for that this year. We change that every season. Historically, this is our 3rd season. We're also very strong in the racing category. So these are both spaces that we're already good at today that I think we can go farther and harder at, so to speak, in the celebrity space.
So celebrity version on baseball and the racing game, probably 2 new categories. It's
possible. I mean, what the debate for us always is it a new game, or are we just going to use celebrities to enhance existing experiences? And this is the difficult balance for us always is, sometimes it's new, sometimes you stand on the shoulders of giants, sometimes you want to just add to and sort of cameo what you already have. And so we do a lot of cameos, by the way. I mean, there's been a number of country music stars have supported our Deer Hunter game. We've done some work with the WWE, for example. And all of these are areas that we could push further into standalone games as well.
What about Justin Bieber, Rihanna?
Interesting question.
Two top people with huge followings, right?
And we may have talked to them. We may be talking to them. And they do. And the question I always ask is what could we do uniquely about for their games? What is a unique Bieber experience? Is it trashing the hotel room? Is it like what is the game about? And what's the unique Rihanna experience about? Because she's a very successful female artist, of course, and she's present in the fashion space, present in the music space, present in the social media space. How do we differentiate that game? And so I think differentiation is going to be a big theme for us for additional partnerships. How do you find someone who's big but very different? Nicki was very different for us, for example, because it's rap and it's hip hop, and she doesn't buttress into the pop space, for example, doesn't buttress into any other area of the overall artistic, let's call it sphere. I'm interested in your guys' opinions, by the way, and we probably have time for a question or two. Polarizing celebrities I've found to some extent might be the right direction for us. Kim was a very polarizing character when we started that partnership. There's people that loved him, there's people that were not so enamored. And kind of like with the political spectrum, getting the base out matters. So catering for the experience of the lovers. And in some ways, the lovers will play the game even more and spend more if there's people that are, they're sort of bad-mouthing it.
Talking about new games versus kind of using existing games. Pokemon Go, obviously, huge success, #1 spot.
Never heard of it. What is?
Any plans of leveraging all the celebrities you're working with for a celebrity version of that? Would that make any sense?
I mean, it could. I mean, you're not the first person in the last week or two to make the suggestion. Capture a Kardashian or something. Like, would that work? We're going to think long and hard on it. Certainly, I think the themes of AR and VR are very relevant. Glu put our Deer Hunter game already on the Oculus Gear earlier this year, and it's making some revenue, but it hasn't seen inflection points of sort of mass market penetration of the hardware. I do think that AR will be in our thinking, whether or not, we've built location-based games, by the way. 8 years ago, we built LBS games in the feature phone era, and it was too early. The grid wasn't good enough, GPS wasn't there. We built a game called 1000 that was not a commercial success. And by the way, prior to Pokemon, Ingress wasn't a commercial success either. They've been plugging away at it for a long time. So I think there's themes that we'll take into our games. I'm not going to promise that we're going to build a LBS AR celebrity game, but I do think that elements of AR are going to be powerful across the entertainment and actually gaming ecosystem.
What's kind of your vision on the future of the mobile entertainment space, specifically as, you just look at the top grossing apps, a lot of, video streaming acts that have not been there, like 6 to 12 months ago are there now, and what does it do to the gaming industry in general?
No, that's the theme that we're definitely keeping our eyes on. I mean, there's no hiding the fact that in the past 18 months, a third of the top, let's say 25, 35 grossing spots have been taken away from game companies, and they're occupied by Spotify, Pandora, HBO, Showtime, Hulu, etc. I don't think it's going to change in the sense that the world has gone mobile. So it's here to stay. We're in a much more mature industry today than we were 5 years ago when, they always joke that game companies and porn companies figure out new hardware platforms first. And so the first couple of years of the App Store, for 3 years, it was just a game store. Today, Facebook is a majority mobile revenue company. YouTube is a top grossing app. And consumers are finally spending, in developed nations certainly, if not the whole world, majority of their time and even the majority of their revenue now through a mobile device of some kind. So we have to compete in that landscape. And this is one of the reasons why I said a few minutes ago that I think the gamification of entertainment is a really interesting intersection for a company like Glu. And it's interesting for the entire game industry to sit up and take note. There will be Pokemon Go's that punch through and occupy the top grossing spot. But subscription apps have a sizable advantage in simple UI that cycles a lot of content through, and that's frictionless, is lean back, is very mass market. We can learn from this. And the future, certainly, of our roadmap is going to integrate some of what's been successful there, certainly given that we're already making, I would argue, entertainment products with our celebrity partners that are competing for that time. If 20% of consumer time goes on Facebook or Instagram or Facebook Messenger, that's something, WhatsApp, so that's something that we have to actually compete for as part of the consumer's day.
You mentioned before that you're expecting a major consolidation in the gaming space. Do you still believe that? And what do you think, what's the timing and who going to be the buyers?
There are definitely more game companies, I think, than there will be in 5 years in the mobile space, at least of any size. Console went through this very healthy consolidation where it probably went from thousands of companies to 5 or 6, really. Three in the US and probably 3 in Japan at this point. Mobile gaming's different because it's a global market for both labor and distribution. So you can sit in an emerging market, publish your game in the US, and have a chance, in theory, of being a top-grossing product, even though you're enjoying very low labor costs compared to here. That's not the case in console. There's no Chinese console companies or Ukrainian console companies that are beating an EA or an Activision because they don't have distribution, they don't have local market savvy, let alone the fact that production costs are going up. So taking that in totality, the market will have fewer, but it'll be 2 tiers. I expect the top tier to be, perhaps a dozen or half a dozen really big multinational mobile gaming companies that are big in the 4 markets that matter: Japan, Korea, China, the US. Each of those markets can support a $1 billion game in a year. And so you'll see some mergers happen across there. Then you'll have very little in the middle. That'll get hollowed out. And it'll look like a barbell whereby you have big companies and you have a very vibrant indie space that's constantly being sold up to the top. So you're starting to see some moves. Tencent, obviously, is an aggressive consolidator. They are the biggest gaming company in the world now by a large margin, having purchased Supercell. And they own 21.5% of Glu, actually, as well as a number of other companies that are probably at this conference. So I expect that they will maintain that leadership position in the next 5 years. They will be probably still the biggest gaming company by revenue on any platform 5 years from today. They are an exceptional gaming company, gaming culture, and they, of course, have distribution assets for that. In the West, there are companies that have platform power. Whether you're a Facebook, a Yahoo, a Unity, these are companies that could get into gaming the way Tencent has taken, WeChat and QQ and gotten into gaming because they have distribution. But Western companies tend not to do it. It's more of an Asian business model to conflict distribution, or rather marry distribution and content. And as a result of that, I expect that there will be more purchasers from Asia to the West than vice versa in the next 5 years for sure. So I think the big will get bigger, and ultimately there will be some more multinational, multi-billion-dollar revenue companies by 2020 than are today at the top.
Just a quick question. I noticed an article a couple of months ago where you, also Glu Mobile, invested in QuizUp, quiz game. And there's a deal with NBC, I think, coming up, right? Is that launching this year, or how big is this of a product launch for you, since you also seem to have rights to acquire the company, I've been told?
That's a good question. Are you Icelandic by any chance?
Actually, I am.
Yeah, so we've got a loan and a call option for a company called Plain Vanilla Corporation that we did earlier this year. We haven't actually updated on what's happening with the TV show, but watch this space. On August 2nd earnings call, we will possibly cover that. That's a partnership that we've been public about. I think it's fair to say that the likelihood of us enacting that call option is much higher if and when the TV show proves that it successfully grows the DAO base of the company. We've been working with QuizUp on growing the revenue base the last 6 months. Relatively successfully if you look at it in the grossing charts.
We've seen a lot of celebrity or Hollywood crossover to mobile games, but we haven't seen, or even gaming in general, but you don't see it work so well going from like game IP to movies or TV. Do you think that's going to change, and why not? Why or why not?
Yeah, content crossover is difficult in every format. If you talk to best-selling authors, their lives will be full of stories about how, this book was not made into a game or a movie or TV show well. And as a result of that, I'd say that it's too early to definitively say that you're not going to see IP go from gaming back to other, let's call it other formats. World of Warcraft obviously made a movie, was not successful in the US, but it crushed it in China. And you've seen investments from, Dahlia and Wanda flowing again from east to west on the back of this opportunity to take Western IP and Western gaming IP and make it work in some markets. So I like to always say that business models can be global, but content's often more local than you think. There are not a lot of foreign game companies that do well in Japan, whether you're Chinese, Korean, American, Russian. Similarly, there's not that many Japanese companies that publish successful games outside of their home market. And it's true in the movie space, the music space, the game space, the book space. We don't listen to a lot of J-pop here. They listen to a lot of J-pop there. And so I actually think that you're going to see similar levels of success. I mean, there have been Nintendo movies. There have been Super Mario movies before. There have been Resident Evil movies done before. They are nicher products, perhaps, than the mass market blockbuster successes. And in some ways, that might be the way entertainment always plays out. Pokemon, sort of rare examples of things you can possibly do very well everywhere. But gaming IP tends to stay in the realm of gaming. Movie IP tends to stay as a primary platform in movies and TV, the big screen. That having been said, we're all going to continue to try to knock the barriers down. No doubt about that. New business models will emerge. If you can make your money in gaming and use TV as an advertising platform, that's a viable business model that didn't exist even 2 or 3 years ago. Similarly, I think there will be more TV through apps than ever before. There will be properties and content made just for the small screen, not the silver screen. And it'll all be jumbled up. So celebrities who are big on YouTube will increasingly become linear celebrities. Movie makers in Hollywood want to see a Kendall and Kylie in their films because they bring 150 million social followers and they want that marketing power. Hollywood tends to lag a little bit. When those Sony leaks happened, people were like, how come Kevin Hart doesn't have to promote the game on social media? We didn't get that in the contract. They'll get that in the contract in future. And so I expect more convergence, even if there's a 2 or 3 year lag, the same way that there's more time going on mobile today, but there's a 2 or 3 year lag to getting the advertising revenues up in mobile and the CPMs up in mobile. By the way, conference organizers, boot us out if you need the space. Otherwise, we can take another question if someone has one. We're also always happy to wrap and accept that thunderous applause of 10,000 people.
So what's your take on the Messenger upcoming ecosystem on how, the WeChat success you obviously know about in Asia. So how are you preparing for the Messenger, ecosystem, and how Facebook is now changing its Messenger platform to be like this one, the way I see it, basically one app to rule everything.
Yeah, look, fundamentally, if you have traffic, you have the opportunity to have a store, and you have distribution. So Glu has always partnered with new handset manufacturers and hardware. We built the first Google Glass game, the first Android game, the first Oculus, Gear hunting game anyway. We built the first Palm Pre game, believe it or not. So, we partner where we think there's opportunity. And we've done things like one of our launch partners for the Kendall and Kylie game was Snapchat, or some of you might have seen the lenses that they were actually pumping out that day. Even Calvin Harris was promoting the first week or two of the launch. So we're attuned to where consumers are spending their time. We're attuned to where social media mindshare is going. And we partner with all of these people, not only for our own games distribution, but in new and exciting ways. So I expect that, for example, we have a partnership, obviously, with Tencent to bring a product called WeFire to the US. Of course, we're going to look and find ways to promote that through WeChat if we can, for example. And we're always at the forefront of exploring new distribution and new hardware. If it works, we'll double down on it. If it doesn't work, we'll spend our time elsewhere. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Wrapped up. Thank you, guys.
You've been a great audience.